Welcome to the Dear Andy podcast. I am your host, Abby Abs, coming to you live from my bedroom right here in the heart of Los Angeles. This is podcast number 1, all about the origin story of the Dear Andy tag. Welcome y'all to my first podcast. I wanted to do a little something different with my podcast. I can't shake this idea and I can't just sleep on this. I've been kind of in a rut, and I think that's what happens to a lot of college graduates who don't really know what's next for them, or if they're just waiting on time to keep moving forward before waiting on a deadline or what it may be. And I'm in this particular position in my life where I'm not sure what I want to do, and I just don't know which doors I have to go knocking at too. So I am just gonna enjoy this podcast and enjoy the stories that I hope to share with y'all. So I wanted to do a little something different because as an Asian American survivor, there's not a whole lot of content out there that's not extremely triggering. But I wanted to build a podcast that was relatable, but also it could be shared to the general public, because I have a lot of stories and I have a lot of lessons and I have a lot of insight I think would be valuable to a lot of people. I am very comfortable with being vulnerable and stripping the many layers of myself to others. I am the bear-all type of person, and I'm completely fine with that. I hope to hold these stories. I was going to say hope to share and tell these stories to my younger one, my little one, one day. But I know it's not just exclusively just my little one. I know it's going to now be, hopefully, to a bunch of people who want to take a listen. So let's talk about the origin story about the Dear Andy tag. Need a little water break. So the Dear Andy tag really began in 2010, 2011, something like that. That was when I first started writing it on Tumblr. So I am currently looking at my first blog post, and it's very fascinating. So I decided Dear Andy because Dear Andy was a very neutral name for a child. I was in between two different names. Andromeda Penelope for a girl, inspired by this book I was obsessed with when I was a freshman in high school. It's called Along for the Ride by Sarah Dessen. And the boy's name would be Anderson Dean. I've been kind of toying with the concept of what kind of stories would I want to share with my future kids someday. And so I wanted to have a name, a structured name that could be for both. So Andy was my middle. Agreements of nicknames for my future kid. And I just think it's so interesting because for a long time I've had the idea of what do I want to say one day? And then I realized that my memory is shit. And then I also realized, that the time when I started this, I was very depressed. And I feel like my best work from the Dear Andy tag really came from a hard time in my life. And so it was just all about being open about my experiences and being vulnerable, and I'm getting better. And there's something cathartic about sharing these stories that I'm no longer afraid to barrel to the world. Yeah, I mean, all these stories are on the internet, and I originally just kind of wanted to keep this to myself, and it was public if you wanted to read it, but I knew it wasn't that special for people to start reading, because it's a lot of content. So, about a year ago, I had a class where I was not forced, but one of our assignments was to write a chapbook. And a chapbook is pretty much a shorter form of a book, like a chapter book. But it could be about a chapter or two long. It's not meant to be a very long book. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I cannot lie and say that I was trying to figure out how I was going to do this, this chapbook, but I think it produced my best work. I've been writing in the Dear Andy tag for about 8 years now, and it was just a great and simple way to just barrel with myself into a little chapbook, but it was all about deciding what topic was going to be the best, and so I decided that the best topic was about the love that ruined me. It's a very interesting and it's a very interesting time in my life because everything was changing, and it was that transition between senior year and freshman year of high school, freshman year of college. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. And so it was this interesting time in my life where I wasn't sure if I was going to wait on a boy and give it more time that lived back home while I lived in Northridge when I was at school. And it wasn't very far, but it's a very different time in my life where I was living on my own and I was being an adult for the first time, and it was either do or die for me at that point. It's like either we give it a shot and we do it, or it just doesn't happen. And so it was a very interesting time in my life, to say the least. But it didn't work out. And so because it didn't work out, it really destroyed me, because this person was someone I met who really checked off all those boxes that I've ever wanted. Like, I wanted to meet this guy at a show, and he was so cute, and he was annoying at first, but then I grew to like him and care about him. And there's these quirky things that he had that made me fall in love with him, pretty much. And I don't know if that was really love. I'd like to chalk it up that it was love, or the first time I experienced loving an adult, because he was about 2 years older than me. It was a very interesting time in my life, I would say, because I didn't know a whole lot about myself just yet. And I didn't know the capacity that I had to love. And I think I realized, like, I was still in high school, and I was still petty, and I was still very young. And I, like, thought about it for a while after that. Like, if I was 20 and I was talking to this, if I was like 19, 20, talking to this 17, 18-year-old girl in high school, what the fuck am I doing? Like, go talk to people your age. Go be with people your age. Like, they're too young. And so I didn't have these thoughts until later on in my life, to be honest. But it was a very interesting time because it was the love that ruined me, pretty much. I couldn't accept the fact that, like, why? Why couldn't we give it a shot? Was it because I wasn't ready? Because he wasn't ready? Was there excuses? Or he just didn't like me that way? Because he chalked it up to saying that maybe in the future. And that really broke me, because I was like, what do you mean? I can't wait on someone. I don't want to wait on someone. That's not fair to make someone wait on you to be ready. And I was in a turning point in my life where I was very like, I was being thrusted into the real life, and I just didn't know what was coming my way. And it spiraled out into a lot of things. And so I think I document how I started drinking, and I started abusing substances because of it. Or at least I started drinking and smoking a lot more weed at that time. It was a very interesting experience because I wanted to self-numb because I was just so depressed and I couldn't stop thinking about this boy. And is it because timing was wrong? Was I up? Yeah, there's just a million things running through my head. Like, I think I'm at a time in my life where I've completely past it. And there's just nothing I have left to say after I finish this chapbook because I condensed it all into like maybe 10 chapters. About like 10 short chapters. It's about 28 pages long, front to back, when I printed it. But yeah. That chapbook really showed me that I was ready to share my story with people and share my vulnerable side and peel back all these layers of myself of trying to understand and trying to read both sides of the coin, pretty much. I was playing devil's advocate with myself, pretty much. So that's the kind of way that I've kind of learned to think and share stories with Andy, I would say. There's a lot of thinking that goes into these chapters, and these chapters were written about in months apart from each other, and I think over the span of like 2 years. And I don't know where the Dear Andy tag will lead, but I guess it's here now. So I've been wanting to write again, or at least contribute back into the Dear Andy tag, but I've just been so lazy, and I just don't think I have the right thoughts just yet. And I think it's all with the progression of life, pretty much, where you figure out what works and what doesn't work, I think. And so now I no longer want to write. I just want to talk and be cathartic. I love listening to people's stories and sharing stories, and so why not do that here? So that is the origin story of the Dear Andy tag, and I don't know. We'll see where this goes. This isn't very long, because I'm looking at it's about 400 seconds long, but I have many hopes for this podcast because there's just so many stories that people don't necessarily say, and people aren't ready to really, like I said, peel back those layers of themselves to really understand and deep dive about their decisions and what they're doing. So I find this very fascinating, and I can't wait to see the progression of this podcast and see where we go from there. So I'll see you all next time.